Hey, what is going on, everyone? Starry Studio recently dropped a bunch of new information around seasons and scenarios, as well as clarifying a few important things. So we're going to cover everything that they talked about in this video, but I've linked the official Discord announcement in the description down below if you would like to check it out for yourself. And of course, if you do end up enjoying the video, definitely drop a like down below to help support the channel. And at the end of the video, definitely leave a comment to let me know your feedback on all these announcements. I would love to hear what you have to say. So first off, let's talk about the differences between seasons and scenarios. There's definitely a good amount of confusion here, so this is what the developers had to say. A scenario is the gameplay theme of a server. You can almost think of it as a game mode with specific rule sets for the server. When Once Human launched in July, it launched with two different scenarios, the PVE scenario Manibus and the PvP scenario Evolution's Call. Each scenario is set within the time frame of a season, with the duration of the season varying according to the specific scenario. And then a season is split into several phases based on the features of that scenario, and more content is unlocked as the server progresses through each phase. Once you unlock all of the scenario content and the season has come to its settlement phase, which is phase 6 actually in our current scenarios that we have, you can then sign up for a new scenario and start a new adventure. If you don't want to start a new scenario right away, you can stay on the same server until the settlement phase is over. I mentioned the settlement phase is phase 6 in our current scenarios, and phase 6 is going to last 4 weeks in our current scenarios. Now, at the end of those 4 weeks, if you don't sign up for a new scenario when the settlement phase ends, your current server will be closed and your character will return to eternaland, where you can continue playing and then you can sign up for a new scenario whenever you would like to. And honestly, I think using the term seasons just makes it a little bit more confusing, as I think a lot of players associate it with how seasons work in other games, and it just doesn't really work the same way in Once Human. Now, in my mind, I'm just going to think of it as extended game modes that are server specific. So if I want to experience a multi-week game mode or quote-unquote scenario, I'll choose a new server with that scenario, play it until the settlement phase, and then choose another scenario when I'm ready. So I almost think of it as choosing a server for a game mode in a lobby browser for another game. But not only does it have unique rule sets and maps for that server and for that mode, but it also has story elements, quests, new enemies, events, and a lot more to explore. And then eternaland basically acts as your main hub where you can build and withdraw items for the next scenario, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. I honestly think it would have been a good idea to start players in eternaland when they first entered the game, and then they could explain how eternaland works from there. And then after that, they would then choose a scenario to enter. Rather than choosing a scenario first and then learning about eternaland later, I just feel like this might have helped clear up some of the confusion. Now, in terms of what you can expect from new scenarios, the developers did mention that new scenarios offer different experiences, such as new survival mechanics like harsher weather conditions and more demanding environments. They've also explained that there will be new maps and areas to explore. Now, I imagine with those first two that the mountain region that they've been teasing may introduce some new cold weather mechanics in the game as well, which will be pretty cool. And then also new scenarios can offer new enemy types and dungeons, and they even mentioned that the same scenarios that you have played in the past may vary the next time that you play it, which is a pretty cool idea. And then lastly, the maximum number of players for each scenario will also vary. Now, hopefully they're able to provide some more clarity on that going forward, as I know a lot of players have been frustrated with these server caps, especially when most servers say low population on them. So hopefully they're able to clarify that before a scenario comes out and give us a more accurate look at how many players can be in each server for each scenario. As for the new scenarios coming later this year, they have announced that a new PvP scenario is coming in September and a new PvE scenario is coming in October. Now, the September scenario, the PvP one, will quote unquote allow you to face confrontations among factions. So it seems like there will be a faction system introduced into the PvP scenarios. And then the October one, which is the PvE scenario, will quote unquote introduce you to an all new map and challenge you to survive in extreme environments. So Starry Studio is also working on a limitless PvP scenario with a longer duration, in addition to a scenario that can be played all year round. And they also plan to release 4 new scenarios each year. So with this September and October scenarios, that would be number 3 and number 4. So I would not expect another scenario to be coming out before the end of this year. Now, since I'm a PvE player, I have to say that waiting until October to get another PvE scenario is a little disappointing, as my server only has a few days left until the settlement phase starts, and the settlement phase will end about 2 weeks before October. So unless I want to sign up for a PvP scenario in September, I feel like I don't have a huge incentive to play unless I want to focus on eternaland solely. I hope in the future that they sync up the new scenario releases, or at least extend the settlement phase to be closer to when a new scenario is available. They have also provided some more details on what you keep and what gets wiped when a scenario ends, and we've covered a good amount of this in previous videos, but let's go through it again here. Now let's start out with everything that you can keep. So first off, your character and cosmetics, so your name, body size, fashion cosmetics, character customization data, your emojis, emotes, actions, name cards, and titles will all be retained to your character, as well as your currencies here. So I know it says material, but I think they mean currencies. So your Starcrom, your Christian, your Mitsuko's marks, stellar planulas, sproutlets, your Lightforged metals, cosmetic tokens, colorful badges, and battle pass tokens, including the silver keys from the battle pass, as well as your battle pass experience. So that is very interesting because I'm not sure if new scenarios will have new battle passes, but it seems at least the silver keys that you can earn during the battle pass will carry over to the next scenario and can be potentially used in the next battle pass shop. You will also be keeping your gear blueprints, so that's your weapon and armor blueprints and their star ratings, blueprint fragments, weapon accessories, mods, including the mod components, and your food recipes. You'll also be keeping your furniture formulas that you've learned, excluding those unlocked in the memetics, your house blueprints, and it even says your finished furniture items. So I'm not too sure if that means those single-use furniture items that you can get that aren't the formulas. I have been placing those in my eternaland island just so that I can keep them. So I recommend doing the same if you do want to keep any of those single-use furniture items, but it also does look to me right here that they will be retained to your character somehow, so you may not even need to place them in eternaland to keep them. You'll also be keeping your seasonal items, such as your season honor shield patterns that you can earn through your season goals, your cultivation essence, which I'm not 100% sure what that is. I don't know if that's a translation thing right here, but if anyone knows what the cultivation essence is, please leave a comment down below. And you'll also, of course, keep your friends list and your group chats, as well as your task completion progress. So it says here, for the main story tasks and side story tasks that you've completed in this scenario, you can play a streamlined version of them in a new season, or you can go through the full version for a second time. So I'm unsure what that streamlined version actually means. I don't know if that means you can just really have one part of the quest and you get the full rewards for it, or however that looks, but that is interesting that you will be able to kind of speed through the quest that you've already done in the previous scenario. And then you will also keep your event progress and materials. So if you hit F3 on your keyboard, you can go to the event screen in the game, and that will show you all the different active events that are going on. So it seems that those will carry over into different scenarios, so you don't have to worry about trying to finish all of those before the end of this scenario. So everything that we've listed so far is inherited directly to your character. So it's not anything that you're going to need to transfer out of eternaland in order to use it in the next scenario. But now let's talk about the things that will transfer to eternaland during the settlement phase. So firstly, your crafted weapons and armor will be transferred to eternaland, as well as your regular resources. They mention materials, medicine, and bullets here, so there are specific resources that we'll cover in just a second that won't get transferred. Your deviations will transfer to eternaland, which is great to see. That was a very hot topic in the community, as well as the calibration blueprints. I was asked many times whether they will transfer over to the next season, and we honestly just did not know, but it's good to see that calibration blueprints will be sent to eternaland. And lastly, your energy links will be converted to astral sand. So when you start your next scenario, you will have 0 energy links, but all the energy links that you have left over from your last scenario will be converted to astral sand, so you can use that to build in eternaland. There will be a ratio of energy links to astral sand. I don't believe it will be 1-to-1, but they have not revealed yet what that ratio is. And then finally, here is everything that will get wiped at the end of the scenario that you will not be able to take over to the next scenario. So your map exploration progress, because maps may change between scenarios, so it makes sense that the map exploration progress won't be transferred. Your character level, of course, will not be transferred over, as well as your memetics. The memetics will get reset. Your scenario core gameplay items, so it lists here your chaotic cortexes and your staroids, so anything that is specific to that type of scenario, because different scenarios will have different rule sets and different items that you will care to collect. So those scenario specific items will not transfer over to the next scenario. And then anything that you have crafted using specializations, so things like solar drills, or even things like gold and silver ingots that you can have a specialization to craft, those sort of things won't get sent over to the next scenario. And I believe this is just mainly because your memetics will reset for the next scenario, so you'll also have to choose your memetic specializations again in that new scenario. So we covered which items get transferred into eternaland, but how do you actually take items out of eternaland to use in the next scenario? So every player will get a certain amount of resource or material points to use for the next scenario. I've heard it called both resource and material points, but they're the same thing. So this is not a point system or points that you need to accumulate yourself. These points are just given to every player, and you have a set amount of them that you can use per scenario. Each item that you choose to bring into the new scenario using material points will cost a different amount of resource or material points. So for example, a deviation may cost more than ammunition that you want to bring over to the new scenario. You can actually get an idea of the material point system in game if you actually go into your backpack and go to the bottom right where you can switch over to your space-time backpack, and then there will be a button there that says export resources, and this actually takes you to the exact menu that you're going to be using to transfer items from eternaland into your next scenario. So you can see that there is 0 out of 20,000 material points right now, so I believe every player will have 20,000 material points that they can use. And then there is something that you can hover over right there that gives you a little bit more of an explanation of what material points are, and it also lets you know that they will not transfer over to the next season or the next scenario, and that is because when you start a new scenario, your resource points will refresh. And there you have it, folks. Those are all of the season and scenario related announcements that the developers made recently. And I do really appreciate them putting this together, but I'll be honest, there are still some lingering questions, such as what specific materials can be transferred over? Will all materials transfer if they aren't specific to a scenario and they don't explicitly say that they will get wiped? Or will it only be basic materials in the game? Now, I'm still in favor of the developers adding an eternaland icon to items in the game that just lets you know if that item can be transferred to eternaland, so hopefully they add something like that soon. And I guess we'll also find out more information once my server hits the settlement phase in a few days, and I will be live streaming that experience on my YouTube channel as well as on my Twitch, so feel free to drop a follow over on my Twitch if you are interested in seeing some of that. Also, I do hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see your feedback in the comments down below about these announcements. These have all been very hot topics in the community, so I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.